FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen. Today, we are going to go on DeviantArt to read today's fanfic. Reading fanfics on DeviantArt sure is fun, especially seeing you don't know how many chapters a fanfic has. You might read a fanfic and think that you only have to read that one thing, and then you find out in the future, oh, guess what? There's more than one part to this story. Kind of like that secret romance story. Okay, let's not think about that. Today's fanfic is called Before the Beginning by Arlene Zima. I probably said that wrong, but oh well. It's a Spyro fanfiction. For those who don't know, Spyro is a dragon. And a lot of his games, I believe, are on the PlayStation systems. I think I played the games once when I was a kid. I liked them when I was a kid. I'm not sure if I would like them now. Oh, whatever. Let's read the fanfic. Author's note. I haven't done any good writing in a long time, and I've never finished my big projects. So now I bring you the first in a group of one-shots. I figure writing single stories will be better than attempting multiple chapters and then losing everything. A what-if question. If all the dragons clutched at separate times over a course of a month or two and the forces of Dark Master attacked early, what would become of the course of the Legend of Spyro series? This one-shot has an ending and could stand alone, but in this series of shots I will attempt to answer this question. Well, I'm going to be a blind duck in this because I really have no idea what the story is for Spyro the Dragon. So, if you guys can help me out in the comments, I would appreciate it. They say that every story starts slow, that the climax of life isn't reached till the hero is forced through dangers and trials unknowing, a perfect dance of puppetry and simple plots where every move is as clear as the wide blue skies in midsummer. That every time a set of criteria appears, the same actions happen again and again. Attention all civilians and militia. The apes have taken the main square and the great walls. Retreat to the temple immediately. This is not one such story. Hurry! If you cannot fly, then run for it. Don't just stand there. He'll crush you. This story instead starts at the climax. Begins at the end, you may say. For life does not stop for just everyone. I can't move. I know that was bad. Shut up. And as such, neither should death stop. But for one peculiar fact about this particular dragon and her unborn egg, this story would have simply been one applied to all the lost in the war. But as her death reached out to her, it's stopped. The small female groaned and forced her trembling legs to move, to back away from the ape bearing down upon her. The skin parted on her back as she moved, proof that the weapon borne by the creature had indeed scored a hit. Her left wing dragged uselessly on the ground, barely connected to her body, and missing large chunks of its thick membrane from where she had used it to defend herself in the previous battle. Her internal confusion only rose when the ape turned away from her and marched off, ignoring her as if she were invisible to the world. Blood-spattered hide trembling from exhaustion, she dragged herself away as fast as she could towards the voice she had been following, dread in her stomach as she passed a few blood-smeared green scales. Perhaps her friend had already fallen? She passed through the city in its ghostly silence, only the far-off sounds of battle remaining to color the atmosphere with horror. The crumbling buildings offered little to no shelter, and there were no dragons or moles yet alive to see her. Her red and gold coloration slowly wilted away as finally her strength left her and she fell into darkness. Ages seemed to pass in an instant, and her mind strayed to her horrible wounds. Was she not dead? How could she live with one wing and her back sliced open along her spine? But despite this, all her mind cleared. Her back flamed into pain, and her golden eyes fluttered open to see a battered and cut green dragon peering down at her. He was utterly nondescript, but she could care less. He had saved her life in the main square before times became dire. She couldn't remember his name for the life of her, nor why he seemed so protective of her, so concerned about whether she lived or died. "Thank the ancestors you're alive. Stay still. You're horribly wounded. We can't have you dying. Not an option." The green dragon began to scuttle away toward a red crystal she could now see. Groggy, she opened her eyes a bit wider and blinked as she realized she was no longer in the dead part of the city. "You carried me here." "Why?" She managed to whimper in a coarse tone. Her claws twitched and scratched at the fur-covered floor as her tail gave a half-hearted sweep, trying to get up despite the warning and finding she lacked the strength. The room was barely intact, and likely underground, with thick, gnarled wooden supports and a roof that domed gently to allow more space. Thick pallets of fur stood around the edges, explaining the fur upon which she was placed, and the large red crystal growing in the wall near a hidden entrance seemed to leave no doubt in her mind. "This is a military hospital room." Oh, oops, wrong voice. "This is a military hospital room. I can't be in here. I'm a civilian." Her cry was weak, but the green dragon had already heard her. His tail curled around one of his hind legs as he turned, a slab of crystal in his claws as he frowned. It was then, you forgot to capitalize the I in it, because that's the beginning of the sentence. It was then that the situation of the room fully hit her. They were alone. There was no one, no one should be one word or two words, not with a hyphen in there. There was no one else in the room, which would normally have been full of off-duty or injured warriors. She sank into the furs beneath her and began to hyperventilate. Hold on. Okay, right after hyperventilate. "The squad that usually uses this room is all dead. Save me. I thought it would be a better idea to use it to save a breeder than simply to leave it empty and its crystals unused." The words struck true, and as the male set a gentle claw on her jaw, and held out a broken chunk of crystal, she eagerly took the healing minerals. The effect was nearly instant, and within minutes she was up and wobbling. Color returned to her scales, and her back closed up. Her wit was still gone, but there are some wounds that cannot heal. She smiled at her savior and nodded her head in satisfaction. "You are right. I am expecting eggs. My name is Flare. Is there any news of the temple? Are the early eggs safe?" The green male looked away for a minute in silence. Great tears dropped from his eyes as he watched her steady herself. "I'm afraid the eggs are all lost, Madame Flare. We are at the very edge of the city, as far as I could take you while still injured. You are one of the only mothers still alive who was expecting." He rumbled nervously after finishing his tale, and Flare stayed quiet for a moment before nodding. "How long will it take to flee to the marshes on foot?" she asked quietly, curling her single gold and red wing. That was my bad, not theirs. Closing her eyes to keep the tears away. The male simply pushed back the tapestry that hid the open doorway and stepped out, allowing her to see where she was. The wide and tree-choked marshes were only half a day's hike away. "Please, accompany me," she asked of the male, before they both left the dead city and began to trek into the gloom to hide away her precious eggs and flaming beauty. It wasn't but a few days later that found Flare in the company of a family of dragonflies, the green male having left to seek the other mothers and to make sure they were hidden. Her groans echoed through the night as she began to feel the trance of egg laying upon her, and she scooped out a soft loamy hole to hold the precious cargo once it came. It took her only a few hours to finish laying her one single egg, her first child as a breeding mother. Her eyes sparkled with delight as she beheld the gleaming purple shell that held her child, the chosen one, the purple dragon. My child, you will avenge the city and all those destroyed by the Dark One. May the ancestors will it to be so. And so it was. Huh. Well, even though I am not really familiar with what goes on in the Spyro games, I have to say this fanfic was pretty interesting. And just reading this fanfic kind of makes me want to play those games. Or at least look up the history of them. When it comes to layout, the layout was pretty good. There was that one little typo with the I in the word it not being capitalized. But other than that, it was pretty good. And if you guys are fans of Spyro the Dragon, you guys might actually like this fanfic. But we'll see. Well, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen, and I have nothing to say. I gotta start filming these at night again.